Welcome, hello, thanks for coming. Today we're going to be taking a look at the board game, Don't Let It Die. And more specifically, what I'm going to be doing is, I'm going to be answering questions to help you decide whether or not you want to buy this game or not. So essentially what I've done is, I've scoured the internet for questions from people who seemed like they were interested in buying the game, but they weren't sure if it was for them or not. So I've taken those questions, added in some of my own, and I'm going to answer those for you today. So I should mention before we get going, I did receive a review copy of this from the publisher. That being said, my ethical compass cannot be swayed. So if you enjoy content from someone who has a compass that is ethical and cannot be swayed, consider subscribing to the channel. All that out of the way, let's dive in. So question number one, what is it? So in Don't Let It Die, lightning has struck. And what has it done? It's created this weird mythical thing called fire. So you and your group of Neanderthals, you have 14 days, well, let's add up some numbers there. 14 days to figure out how to create fire on their own. If they don't do that by the end of the 14 days, a giant flood's gonna come, wipe out the fire, and then ultimately make mankind extinct. Yeah, pretty brutal. So how are your people going to learn how to make fire? Well, that's going to be through a skill tree. So in this game, there are multiple skill trees, and essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be choosing one skill tree to work through, and you're going to be going through that skill tree, trying to get to the very end where they're going to learn how to make fire. So how does this flow of the game work? So the game, it's pretty thematic. It's broken up into multiple phases. The primary phase of the game is the day phase. So in the day phase, you're going to take your 4 Neanderthals that you choose, and you're going to take those 4 people, and essentially you're going to use their stamina one at a time to do different actions throughout the day. And those different actions, there's a nice player sheet that comes with the game, which is a good little cheat sheet that tells you what you can do with your stamina. But pretty much you're going to use stamina, you're going to spend that on getting resources essentially. And what are those resources going to help you do? They're going to help you craft different items, weapons, tools, and they're ultimately going to increase your chance of survival. One of the other things that you can do as well, and this is mainly how you learn how to make that fire, is you can spend stamina to roll the fire knowledge die, I believe is what it's called. And essentially it's a 6-sided die, you roll it, and you get X amount of fire knowledge tokens. And those fire knowledge tokens, you're gonna use those to upgrade this skill tree to then ultimately gain additional perks as you go throughout the game, and then ultimately get to that last coveted skill of learning how to make a fire. So that's the day phase. After that, you're going to go to the night phase. The night phase is essentially a deck of cards called the night event cards. You're going to draw one of those cards and something's going to happen. And these night event cards, they can be good, they can be bad. A lot of them are going to be bad. So you're going to draw it, do whatever that action says, and then you're going to move on to the morning phase. And in that morning phase, so this is kind of like the preparation phase, I guess you would say, getting the next day set up. In that morning phase, what you're going to do is you're going to take a certain amount of wood away from the fire, which is not good, because if all of your wood goes away from the fire, you end up losing the game, because if there's no wood in the fire, how is it a fire? It is extinguished. So in that morning phase, you're going to take wood away, everyone's going to take a damage, they're going to refresh to max stamina, you can trade items if you want to, and then you're going to do it all over again. And you're going to do that for 14 days. And that, in a nutshell, is Don't Let It Die. So, next question. And this question, you know, I was curious about it myself, is what are the threats in this game? And as I was looking at it, I couldn't really figure it out. I was like, okay, I get the basic premise of this, but how do I actually die other than having the firewood leave? So, and lo and behold, this is a pretty tough game. There are a lot of threats. Yeah, there's a lot. In the day phase, the main threats come from the 4 different resources, or I say resources, they're like card stacks that you can draw from. So in those, you'll spend stamina to draw a card, and you're hoping to get resources, but what you might get is an enemy card. And the enemy cards, they're gonna have health, they're gonna have damage, and if you don't have enough or I guess if you don't have a weapon that has enough damage to then kill that enemy will then damage you and you're going to lose health. So as with any game, if you lose health, you're done. You're dead. You can still come back if someone feeds you 3 meat, but that might be pretty tough because meat's going to help you heal. So that's one of the ways to get hurt in this game and to lose. One of the other things, and we'll get to it a little bit later, in the deluxe version of the game, there are these day cards that come with it. And those day cards, if you end up drawing a card from the deck that doesn't give you any resources, you get to draw a day card. And sometimes those day cards don't have good effects. I don't know what the percentage is, but I feel like a lot of them actually end up hurting me. So those are the 2 big threats. And those are the 2 big ones for the day phase. The night phase, that's just like I've mentioned before, that's a stack of cards. You're going to draw something. A lot of times something bad's going to happen. It might affect the resources that you have. It might affect the health that your people have. There's all sorts of different things that can happen with the night events. And then the last threat, that you will face in the morning phase, as I had alluded to, you lose 1 wood every morning. Or actually, that is wrong. You lose a certain amount of wood every morning based on the day that you're at. So the further along that you go from day 1 all the way to day 14, you're going to lose more and more wood from the fire. And that is the biggest threat that you're kind of playing around in this game, because you're trying to make sure, okay, do I have enough wood in this? Because come that morning phase, if I lose 3 wood and I only had 3 wood in there, the game's over and you're done. So that is the main threats that you're going to be facing throughout this game. Next question. Okay, how much strategy is there versus luck? And this is a good one, because now that we've got a general feel for the game, it's interesting because there are 4 main resource piles, right? And granted, they are decks of cards that you shuffle, and they have random enemies and things like that you can't really mitigate. One thing that you're going to learn throughout this game is the 4 characters that you end up choosing. Every character in this game, I believe there's 17 that come with it, is very unique, and they all have their different abilities. And a lot of what this game is going to be is it's going to be trying to maximize your individual character or characters, their abilities. And you're going to try and maximize that to the best that you can, or to the best of their ability, huh? You're going to maximize their abilities to benefit you the most. So, and a lot of times, those abilities, they don't necessarily mitigate the luck of the card draw, but you can play it a certain way to where, oh, okay, this guy, anytime he faces an enemy, he can run away and escape it and not take any damage. Okay, cool. So maybe I'll have him do these enemy-intensive things. And I say enemy-intensive things, it's the higher cost decks to get resources from, they're going to have bigger enemies, more badder enemies, I guess you would say. So a lot of it's that. The night events you can't control, you can't mitigate that. That is literally a deck of cards, you shuffle it at the beginning, and each night you take another one. That's just tough luck. You can't do anything about that. And then the other last one that I would say is almost pure luck in this game, because there are some characters that can change this, is the fire knowledge token, or not token, the die. I think it's the fire die is what it's called. So that's the main way that you end up getting these fire knowledge tokens to ultimately work through the skill tree and get different abilities. So that's literally a 6-sided die, right? There's a blank side. I want to say that if there's a blank side, there's 3 1-fire values, and then there is 1 2 value, one that has 2 fire value, one that has 3 fire value. That one's literally a die. So you spend stamina to roll it, you roll it, and that's the result. And like I said, some characters have abilities that might let you re-roll it, right? So that's kind of that. But yeah, really, the main feel of this game is you're trying to understand, okay, what's going to come at me and how do I mitigate that with what I'm given? So there we go. Next question. So now that we know all of this, is this game multiplayer solitaire? And good question. Yeah, thank you. And is it multiplayer solitaire? By that, what I mean is this a game where you can play with multiple people, but each person's just gonna do tunnel vision? I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm not gonna talk to you, and I'm just gonna do all my own actions and leave me alone. And the answer to that is a big fat no. One of the main reasons behind that is everyone shares a single pool of resources. So any resource that any individual gets, that ends up going into the same pile. And everyone ends up using that resource to do all the actions in the game. Well, minus rolling the fire die, but all the crafting actions, I should say, right? So use these resources to build tools or build weapons. And because everyone shares it, there's always that interaction. There's always that conversation of, hey, okay, what do we need to get? Okay, well, maybe my person has this ability, so maybe if we got this resource, oh, but the thing is that person who has this ability and they need that resource, they're not actually able to go and get that resource. So maybe this other character can go, hey, buddy, can you go get that resource for me? And then maybe they'll say sure, maybe they'll say no. So a lot of that interaction comes with, there's a lot of discussion I've noticed whenever I play this is, hey, what should I do next? Or, oh, okay, you know what, I think I'm gonna do this. Or, you know what, no, we just need to upgrade the fire knowledge tree. So let me roll this die. And it's a lot of the discussion, I guess you would say. And it's pretty nice, it's pretty pleasant. I've enjoyed that about this game. So next question, how is it solo? And it's interesting because I just talked about how there's all this interaction between all these people, but with this game, regardless of the player count, you're always going to play with 4 characters. So if it's a 1-player game, you control all 4. If it's a 2-player game, 2 and 2, so on and so forth. Solo, I've really enjoyed it, even though you don't have that interaction, right, between all the other people you're playing with. That's just the nature of solo, but it functions really well as a solo game. It's might be a little bit overwhelming if you haven't played the game and you're just diving in as solo, just because you've got 4 characters that you have to understand their abilities, so you might be looking at all of them. But once you get past that hump of understanding the character abilities, it's a pretty smooth experience, and really it's not any different from any of the other, versions. How do you say that? Other player counts, that's the word. So anyways, okay, next question. So how does the difficulty scale? And can it scale? And you know what? That is one really neat thing about this game, because there are a lot of little things that you can adjust. So I've alluded to this fire knowledge tree. So that's that skill tree that you need to get to the end of the game and learn how to create fire. So there's actually 4 that come with the game. And there's an easy, normal, normal plus, and then there's a hard one. And essentially what it does is, as you choose the different skill trees, your skill tree becomes bigger, more paths to get different things, and then it ends up costing more. So that's one way you can add difficulty to the game, or I guess tailor it towards your taste. The game does recommend that you start on the easy difficulty. But the other way that you can do it is I want to say it's the round tracker. I can't remember what it's called. It's the tree looking thing that you end up tracking what days there are. So that's actually double-sided. So there's a normal side and then there's a hard side. So in addition to changing the skill trees, you can change that round tracker. And essentially if you flip it on the harder side every morning, instead of losing 1 wood, well, not wood, instead of taking 1 damage, I believe everyone's going to be taking 2 damage. And then same thing as well, it's the way it scales with as you go further in the game, it ends up taking more wood out of the fire pit. So it gets pretty difficult. So you can flip that round tracker over and then still do normal, or you could keep the round tracker the same and do a different difficulty skill tree. So there's a lot of variability in how that works. So next question, and does the difficulty scale? Well, that kind of asks, how replayable is it, right? So I've already mentioned that the difficulty scales. This game comes with, oh man, I want to say it's 17 characters. And as I mentioned, you only ever play as 4 characters at a time. So I've noticed you always get a different combination of characters because there's so many, right? These different combinations of character wildly change how you're going to be approaching the game. I believe you can choose the characters if you want. I personally like doing that random and just dealing out 4 random ones, and then we just kind of deal with whatever we're given. But there's some games where I've gotten characters that all had low health, and then I've gotten like a bad string of luck, and then it's just like, bam, I'm done. And then I'm like, okay, well, that was rough. I want to try this again. So you have the characters. I haven't really noticed the skill trees. One thing I've seen is you're probably going to get a natural path that you want to progress down the skill tree. But what's neat is as you play with different people, it's fun for me seeing how they actually want to approach the skill tree. And they're saying, well, actually, let's take this path instead of this path. So I could see getting comfortable with that skill tree and kind of becoming comfortable with, okay, this is how I always want to level up and this is how I want to win. So there is that aspect of it. So almost done. Next question. What is the difference between the retail and the deluxe version of this game? So there are two versions of it as of now, and they're pretty minor. The deluxe version obviously has everything that the retail version has, but the main difference is you're going to have one extra character. That one extra character introduces a new resource type, so you're going to have new resource tokens. I believe they're fish. And you're going to also get, and this is the big addition, and to me this is the main reason I've been playing the deluxe version. The main reason I would get the deluxe version is because you get these day event cards. And the day event cards are pretty nice because they add some excitement, variability to the day. So essentially what they do is whenever you pay stamina to then draw a resource, sometimes you can get a nothing card, which means you get nothing, right? But what's neat is normally that would feel bad and it would suck, but where it adds excitement is now if you draw a nothing card, you end up getting one of these day event cards. And it's pretty fun because it's essentially like the night event cards where you don't know what's going to happen. It's just random events and you get to see what happens. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. So sometimes things get worse. You draw nothing, it sucks. You draw an event and then you like take damage or something. And that is very unfortunate, but it's very exciting. So that's really the big difference between the two editions. Other than that, it's everything's the same to my knowledge. So now that we're at the end, final thoughts. So what did I think of the game? Initially, I actually didn't like this game. I don't know. I just initially it didn't. The game looked neat, but what's interesting is the more that I played it, the game started growing on me, and I've gotten to the point after multiple plays that I'm enjoying it and I'm looking forward to playing the next game. And I should mention, I think the reason I didn't enjoy it initially is because the game recommends you to play on easy mode initially for your first game. And with that easy mode, you didn't really, it felt like too loose of a game where there wasn't that much tension. So we kind of beat it too easily. It felt like I got to a point where it was like, okay, let me pay stamina, roll the fire die, and then see what ends up happening, right? And I'm just going to keep rolling until I max out the skill tree and I'm done. So that was the first game. And then the second game I played, I proceeded to thoroughly get beat down by after I went through less than half of the days in that day tracker. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's some teeth to this game. And that was on normal difficulty. And I was like, oh, let's see what happens. And it's pretty fun because the more I've played it, and this is kind of why it's grown on me, is each game, it's interesting. It has like this emotional arc, I guess you would say, right? It's at the beginning, and this is kind of, I've noticed this mostly on, well, really, I guess any difficulty I'm playing on, minus that easy one. But what ends up happening is at the beginning of the game, it's kind of loose, right? You're like, oh, okay, I start the game with 3 wood in the fire. I'm pretty good. Let me get some resources. Let me roll the die, try and level up the skill tree. But one bad night event or a couple of poor rolls on the fire die, and then pretty quickly you start realizing, oh, I'm running out of wood in the fire. And the game starts getting tight pretty quick. And it's neat because every game has been, okay, opening is a little bit relaxed, but then after that, it's just tension throughout the whole game. And it's like elongated because it feels like you're just scrapping by. And it's, okay, I've got, what characters do I got? How do I maximize everything? How do I use their abilities to the best of my ability and maximize this game and make it out on the other side? And that's what's really neat. It's that arc, right? The beginning is, okay, it's a little bit looser. And then tension all the way through. And then in the games that I've won, which isn't that many, in the ones that I've won, the way it is you get to a point where you've kind of got a good flow going in this game. And it's interesting. I wouldn't call it an engine building game, but it almost has that feel where you your people almost start with nothing, and some characters do if it says, hey, start with a stick or something like that. But for the most part, no one starts with anything, and then you slowly build everyone up throughout the course of these 14 days. And it's neat because you hit that point where, okay, this person's always going for this. This girl's always doing this. This guy's always doing this. And you kind of have a good flow going, and you hit a point where that tension starts coming off towards the end, and you start like freeing up, and you're like, oh, okay, I think we might actually have this. I think we might be able to do it. Hey, okay, well, I got enough wood for the next day. Now let's just put our foot on rolling this fire die and getting experience and learning how to make this fire. So it's that emotional arc that you feel throughout the game that's really, it's kind of what's kind of caught me and kind of kept me coming back to it. I should say too, and it's interesting, this is probably the most fun I've had losing a game. And my hunch is that's because of that tension that I keep talking about. Because there's so much tension, and it gets so dramatic as you draw a night event card, and then it's like, oh crap, everyone takes 2 damage or something. And then you're like, what? And then that compounds with the morning phase, and then in the morning phase, you lose a damage, so I just lost 3 damage all over the course of a night. And it's, I think because of that tension and these dramatic swings of, okay, let me draw a card. I know I can mitigate some of these card draws, but oh crap, that guy has 3 life, and I thought my 2 damaged weapon was good enough. And it's we've laughed quite a bit even when losing this game, and it's been really fun. So do I like it? Yes, it's a fun game, and dare I say it's an engine building game. It's dangerously close to getting that feel of progression and building up. So that's my thoughts on Don't Let It Die. I hope me answering all these questions help you decide whether or not you want to buy the game or not. Like I mentioned previously, this was a review copy that I did receive, but as I had mentioned, I've got an ethical compass that cannot be swayed. So if you like seeing this type of video where you've got a person who has a compass that's ethical and that stays on track, consider subscribing to the channel. Other than that, that's all I have today. Hope it helped you out. Thanks for watching. Until next time, so long, farewell. Nice.